Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and on today's show, I assume we will debate whether the Jimmy Johnson trade chart actually says the Timberwolves got value trading a first-round pick 7 years into the future.
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and there is no worse moment in Vikings history than the Scabs.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Hey, from now on, Tim Connolly gets to run the drafts of all Minnesota sports teams. Those are just the rules now after last night.
Hey, Arif Hassan with the Wide Lev Substack. Do you think that the middle schooler that the Timberwolves won't be drafting in 2031 knows who he is right now?
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Minnesota Football Party, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome in. You met the panel, Luke Inman, Luke Braun, Arif Hassan. I'm Sam Ekstrom. We're talking Vikings, as we do every Monday and Thursday in live fashion. You're on Locked On Sports Minnesota. You can catch us on demand on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe or listen to the audio on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed wherever you find your podcast. Today's debates will include Jordan Addison's ceiling in year 2. What does that look like? We continue our off-season Rank 'em series. And again, the opposite of Monday, where we ranked the top out-of-nowhere QB seasons in team history. That was spirited. That was interesting. Today, we do the worst QB experiments in team history. That should be even more provocative. Ron Johnson also joins, and I'm going to bring up the name Kyle Bowler to Ron Johnson, get his thoughts on that. Can't wait. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, gentlemen, you know the topics. We're getting into Jordan Addison's year 2 ceiling. A lot of the headlines have been wrapped up with Justin Jefferson because of the extension. Haven't talked a lot about Jordan Addison. We probably talked more about wide receiver 3, to be honest with you, as we did on Monday's show. But today we're going to talk about the clear wide receiver 2. That's Jordan Addison, coming off a 911-yard rookie season. Now, before we start, I just want to throw this out there to you guys. 2020 wide receiver draft class considered the best of all time. You got Jefferson, Ayuk, Lamb, Judy, Higgins, Mooney, and Claypool were probably the top 7.
Pittman in there
20.
as well?
Say who?
Yeah,
Pittman?
I put Pittman above Claypool.
Gosh, why did Pittman not meet my my filter? That's weird. Okay, throw Pittman in there as well. 2023 though,
and you missed Jalen Reagor too for some reason.
Dude, put some respect on it.
Go
Henry Ruggs?
working.
Henry
I
Ruggs?
gotta adjust these
Ruggs?
parameters. Unbelievable.
It's gotta suck to be like to have one of those classes and then be the team that like got the bad one.
Oh, can you imagine? Oh, yeah, that hurts, dude. That
Yeah.
hurts.
I'm sure there's a million examples for the Vikings that people are like now
I'm
typing
sure.
in the
yeah,
comments to
yeah.
insult
Now they're
word.
just like flooding
Or a
people's
great
minds.
quarterback class, and the Cardinals take Josh Rosen. They don't take
Yeah.
Lamar, Josh Allen. Like, it just hurts, man. Yeah.
The Achilles Smith curse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, majority of those players we just rattled off, they were really good as rookies. That's held up. Claypool's probably dropped off a little bit. Mooney maybe a little bit as
Probably.
well. The rest are legit. Look at last year's rookie receiving class, though. As good as Jordan Addison was, it's hard to say where he even sits. I mean, you could make an argument for let me
like
just
third.
read them off. Let me read them off
go
and
ahead.
then go at it.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua, obviously number one. Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. All very good, played 16-plus games, 60-plus catches, and most of them flirted with 1,000 yards. Puka blew past it. Addison's kind of right in the middle of another stacked receiving class. Go ahead, Inman.
Well, I was just going to say, where would you put Addison then? Because Puka, that's like, I'm not going to say once a decade anymore, but like that was so fluky. Yes, Puka on a tier of his own, but Addison probably higher for me anyways than like the Josh Downses of the group, maybe even Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers, maybe in that mix, kind of in that second tier right below Puka with Rashee Rice maybe. But I'm just curious where you guys would have him ranked as well. But to your point, regardless of where we're going to rank him, you're right, Sam. Another crazy wide receiver draft class.
Mm-hmm. Does that make Quentin Johnston the Rager of this class? Is that
so far?
Yep.
So far.
Boy.
And I'm not just saying that
honestly,
for TCU reasons.
You put Jackson in there, but Jackson really, I mean, he flashed, but he's still like the clear-cut wide receiver 3 right now over there.
Yeah, I don't have a huge issue with Jackson Smith and Jigba's performance. Like, I think from an analytical perspective, once you account for the fact that he's wide receiver 3, statistically he still underperformed despite that. But I think he was good, so I'm going to throw that away and not use that because it doesn't further my narrative personally. So I think, there are players that, based off of what we've seen, have the opportunity to do a lot more and take a big leap. I think like Michael Wilson, for example, is a good example of a receiver who I think played very well, but you would be wrong to put him in the top 5 rookies of the class this year kind of scenario. But I think is in that situation. I think Jordan Addison is kind of in between the two, where it's like very clearly his production doesn't match Rashee Rice, and overall what we saw doesn't match Puka Nacua, and like you said, he's like probably in that Zay Flowers group. But based off of what I've seen, there's a lot I think to be optimistic about. Addison, where, if we take like the off-field stuff away for Rashee Rice, I don't know that there is a ton more there. I mean, he's playing with an outstanding quarterback. So
I also forgot Tank Dell.
I was going to say, we didn't even mention Tank Dell either.
It's probably Puka and then Tank, and then we've got this melange of like your Zay Flowerses and Rashee Rices and Jordan Addison.
I think of them all too. I think he resembles Tank's play a little bit. Undersized, just a demon versus off coverage, but last year specifically, and who knows? Reports are he's getting bigger, he's getting stronger. We'll see once we get to camp, but did struggle with press and man coverage and things like that. And that just may always be kind of his game. Same with Tank Dell's game as well. But those two kind of reminded me of each other, I feel like, just as far as their play strengths and play weaknesses as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you can, with Jordan Addison's frame, I don't know if you can ever have a guy that isn't going to struggle with like a big physical corner that can just kind of play bully ball and knock him off the route.
Mm-hmm. In year one, Jordan Addison, 11th in depth of target amongst receivers last year. Limited drops, 15 plays of 20-plus yards. Had the same contested catch rate as JJ, by the way, 9 of 22 last year. Probably a down year for JJ in that regard. Areas where he can improve, only 30% completion rate on downfield throws, was 6 out of 20. That was 66th in the league. But here's what I like about Addison. Feels like he can perform with any quarterback wherever he is. Like Pickett, good.
Yep.
Caleb Williams, obviously pretty good. Kirk, good. But he didn't drop off that much post-Kirk either. It's like 482 with Kirk, yardage-wise, 429 post-Kirk. And that's pretty much split down the middle in the regular season.
I'm thinking about the Cincinnati game with Nick Mullins. He's making shoestring grabs, going for touchdowns. You're talking about, okay, one area he could improve, deep downfield. My mind immediately goes to that Monday Night Football game where he was wide open down the sideline, and I don't even remember who the quarterback was now at this point, but the quarterback missed him, just threw it out of bounds. Was it Dobbs? It wasn't Dobbs.
Was it the Chicago loss?
Yes, it was Chicago loss. Wide open down the sideline for a touchdown. Guy missed him. So, pros and cons for sure, but you're right, Sam. I'm glad you brought that up. He feels like he's not very quarterback dependent. Like he made Kenny Pickett look like a first-round quarterback as a true sophomore, by the way, 19-year-old sophomore at Pittsburgh. Then he goes to USC, Caleb Williams, okay.
Carried Caleb Williams, that's right.
Okay,
Yep.
And then he made, splash plays with Kirk.
Yeah, had that take before he was a Bear.
The one thing I will say, now that I'm kind of replaying all these splash plays out, some of them don't necessarily make me feel like we can run that back again. Like, some of the plays were outstanding, but like that San Francisco play, right? Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Are those going to be, repeatable? Are those going to be consistent?
Ripping it away from a guy? Yeah.
I don't know, man. Some of the splash plays in general, the shoestring grab for Cincinnati that ends up going for maybe that's just
he kind of does that. That's like his thing.
Kind of do that though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's where I kind of struggle a little bit as far as year 2 predictions. It's just
I think, like, first of all, that specific catch, Jesus Christ, but
I know.
But the skill set that allows a player to make that kind of catch, I mentioned this before. One of the reasons that I appreciate like Gronk so much as a receiving tight end, not that like he's like underrated there. I think people appropriately rate how good he is. But like one of the things about Gronk that was really special is that he had a true catch radius in that he could catch stuff that was thrown below his knees. And at tight end specifically, you didn't get like a ton of that. Like it was really their catch radius extended, above and outside of them, but not below them. Whereas with Gronk, that's something he could do. That skill set is important at every receiving position. That includes wide receiver, where you're going to see it a little bit more often. But I do think that kind of flexibility, that kind of body control in that particular type of awkward situation, that does translate over time. Maybe not that specific type of catch, good Lord, but it is a larger catch radius than someone of his size you typically associate with that phrase, because there's more areas where you can throw the ball and maybe reasonably expect to catch. And, we talk a lot about stuff like drop rate and contested catch win rate. But unfortunately, we don't really have a statistic for like saved catches that should have been incomplete, but through the, incredible acrobatics of the receiver or whatever, turn out to be, complete, right? And, we've had our fair share of like, we watched the Case Keenum season together. We all know that that's a thing that a receiver can do. But, that's something that might, based off of what we've seen, be part of Addison's, armory of skills, right? And I really appreciate that. That's going to be pretty good playing with like Sam Darnold and a young quarterback like JJ McCarthy. That's probably like an excellent thing to have. And you don't typically have that
struggle in the deep ball.
Right, exactly.
Which is sort of the point.
Yeah. Having that at wide receiver 2 and not just at wide receiver 1 is a little bit of a luxury, right? We got to see, how good, Cincinnati could be having 2 receivers like that and a high-level quarterback. There's a lot of passing production you can get just off of that fact, despite the fact that Cincinnati just, still doesn't have an offensive line, right? The Vikings are now in a spot where they could maybe develop that kind of quarterback. They have a better offensive line, and they've got, 2 receivers that have the ability to make a quarterback look good.
Top 2 wide receiver stack combos in the league: Philly, Cincy, Minnesota, Miami.
Miami is up there, yeah. Unfortunately, Seattle, they're probably dropping off of their, Tyler Lockett's
probably
dropping off
if it was best 3 wide receiver, then Seattle would be right up there. But
yeah, and in which case we'd be saying, unfortunately, Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd's no longer there.
Right.
Yeah, and he dropped off a year or 2 ago. But
hopefully we get to see, Addison and JJ together for an entire season this time. I always think back to what KOC said after they drafted Addison, right? We got Justin Jefferson. He's going to command double coverage, sometimes triple coverage, but double coverage every play. We need somebody to come in and make defenses pay for that and win one-on-one consistently, right? More times than not. And he showed he can do that. Again, off coverage, he's a demon, eats him up. Press coverage, again, like Luke said, with this size, that's probably always just going to be a struggle, kind of like a Devontae Smith kind of thing in Philly. But, I think I said it last week or maybe 2 episodes ago. What happens when teams just double both these guys until Hawkinson gets back? That does kind of scare me a little bit more, the more and
You're
more
throwing to Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, wide receiver 3.
If you're doubling 2 guys on the outside, you're playing like the softest, too high in the whole world. Like, we're running the ball on that.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones
sure.
gets it either way.
Yeah.
Most important
that
stat.
sounds like a CJ Ham seam route, right? Like that just feels like
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Wheel route it, baby. Yes.
CJ Ham deep targets.
Dude,
I
money.
need more.
That's
yes.
Most important stat from rookie year Addison was the 17 games played, I thought.
money.
I guess that sets him up for some injury regression. If we haven't seen him really have to play banged up yet or come back from an injury,
was
that would
hurt.
be one
He was
concern.
hobbled, wasn't he? He played all
He
17,
was.
though?
I thought that was a training
like an
camp deal,
ankle?
though. Or did he have to play through it?
Yeah, he got hurt in the same Lions game Hawkinson got hurt in and had to play the rest of the season.
That was the
with an
that was the
ankle
game
injury.
where he had 2 yards. Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
so
But he came
so
back.
maybe there is an injury that happens that he just has to have some games where he's playing through it.
I mean, that was easily the biggest concern was the size. The team said that they didn't really care if he bulked up. Like they think that his secret sauce is the speed, separation, the elusiveness. They don't think it benefits him to bulk up. So he's probably playing at or similar to that weight for a while.
Dude, he is so small, man.
I
he makes it
that's
work.
Like,
He's great
that's
at what he does.
So refreshing, just for
It really
narrative
is.
reasons.
Let him be him
Yes.
instead of like trying to
Yes.
like take this idea of what the prototypical wide receiver is supposed to be. He's 6'3", he's 230 or whatever, and saying like you must be closer to this instead of what you were that brought you success. Like let guys just be themselves.
We
I like it.
drafted
It's so
we
nice.
drafted this guy because he's good at what he does. We're not gonna screw around with that. It's like
Hey, you're good
I
at
still
being Jordan
think-
Addison. Why don't you try to be Quentin Johnston though instead and be a bigger
Like,
body guy? Like,
Right?
what?
Exactly right.
Well, why didn't you
In
just
the
draft Quentin
history
Johnston then?
Of,
Okay.
In the history of like Vikings ruining players, right? Which, we can never know, right? But I think that the Vikings
Rattle off
ruined
like
Toby
9 offensive linemen.
Patterson?
Yeah, well, yeah, Clemmings, right?
Yeah.
But I think the Vikings ruined Toby Gerhart, right, by asking him to add on a ton of weight. I mean, the guy was a 3-down running back at Stanford. He nearly won a Heisman, right? Don't know why they drafted him, but great, fine. And then they were like, yeah, you got to add like 30 pounds, and then something he's like not as effective, and he doesn't gain it back. Same thing with James Lynch, a Baylor edge rusher. That Zimmer was like, you could play nose tackle, right? Like, what? That's crazy.
could
I think
not
he's coming back.
resist.
I think he's
Yeah.
coming back
Hercules?
this year.
Yeah, he's
I think
coming
on
back.
the
He
team.
is
yeah,
back.
He's on the team.
Hopefully,
For now.
Yeah, for
yeah.
now.
Afadi, I don't know. That guy was kind of just surprisingly good at a bunch of stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, I think Afadi had the career, like a commendable career for a 7th rounder.
Oh,
yeah,
for
and
sure.
like maybe
that.
maybe it would have been ideal if they did find a position for him and have him stick with it. Like I very sympathetic to that argument, Sam. But he did like overperform, his draft slot. So I will give
Yes.
him that. But yeah, I mean, like I think Oli Udoh, if they had never tried him at guard, there's like a pretty reasonable shot that he'd be, a pretty decent swing tackle instead of having to deal with it. So like there is like a lot of situations where, they fundamentally change a player, and sometimes it's like adding or losing weight, and it just kind of screws everything up instead of creating a new asset for you.
Kellen
I
Mond
was-
forcing him to be a quarterback? Like, what?
Yeah, why would you have just
do
been
that? No.
Drafting him into
Why
the
would
NFL,
you-
a place he clearly didn't belong.
Come
yeah,
on.
it just ruined him. But yeah, I mean,
Speaking
but
of the rankum,
yeah.
Oh, nice.
But like also like this is like nice just from a training camp narrative perspective, because it's always X player gained weight. Oh, that's fantastic. He's got so much more strength and power. Or X player lost weight. Oh, that's fantastic. He's going to have more speed. It's always a good thing when a player changes their weight right before you head into training camp from a narrative perspective. And that's insane. So I love that that the Vikings are just like, yeah, he's going to maintain the same weight. Why are you asking us this?
And again,
there's
that
something
was
to
yeah. Go ahead.
there's something too with Addison that like he showed up when they needed him. Like his best games were
Yes.
the ones with Jefferson out, and that was sort of the narrative around him was because of his size. It's like, well, he's kind of got to be a wide receiver too, and where do you draft a wide receiver too? But when it was time to be wide receiver 1, he stepped up. And I don't know, the like ESPN Jordan, which is very much a personality trait of his that all of his old coaches will attest to, is just the playmaker, this like really intense desire to be the hotshot playmaker that's on TV, and that just like shows up on Monday Night Football. And I feel like I'm excited to watch him specifically on Monday Night Football again. And it would have happened in the other Monday night game if Josh Dobbs didn't whiff on that deep throw.
Right. Well, against Philly too, he got him. They needed a big play against Philly, and he got it. He kept him in that game for a while longer too. So you're right.
Man,
there is a
Monday
big
Night
play.
Football 3 times. No, that was Sunday night.
Was that
Philly.
Sunday night? Yeah.
Philly
was
was
that-
Thursday.
They
Oh, it's
did
Thursday.
have,
Thursday,
Oh,
week
Jesus
2.
Christ.
Week 2. Yeah.
Al
they did have, what was it, 5 primetime games or something like that? It was like almost as much, or 4 primetime
Yeah.
games, and then
And
the
the
Chiefs
Denver
had
game?
5.
Philly,
Denver,
San
Philly.
Francisco,
Denver.
Chicago, and Green Bay. 5.
5. Dude,
Wow.
Thankfully,
what
we
in
are
the
out of
world?
the spotlight now. Everybody's looking
kidding.
away.
Now we
Good.
thrive. Now we
Excellent.
thrive.
All right. The spotlight has turned to someone else. We
Yep.
can
I
grow
didn't-
in peace.
Yes.
The Vikings are like a vampire. You don't want them in the sun. Yeah, 100%.
We were looking forward to watching Kirk on quarterback so much last summer because of the season that they had, and I'm not that fired up to watch Jefferson rehab from last year. I think I'm more excited for the other guys.
Maybe
I
it
don't
was
know how
the
you guys
trailer, but it got me amped up, man. Like most trailers do. They're
I've-
meant to get you amped up. They give you the best 2 minutes of the entire series right there with some cool
I've
music,
heard
dramatic music. But
good things from somebody who's been able to secure an advanced screening. I've heard some very
Ooh,
good things. They're like, you're gonna love it. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't want to watch exactly what you said, Sam. I was like, I don't really want to watch Justin Jefferson. That just seems sad. Like, this guy deserves all the joy in life. He brings joy wherever he is, and to see him get hurt or whatever. And the person I talked to was like, "Nah, you'll still like it. Jefferson does an outstanding job there." So
I too have heard that the rehab is not like the whole season or anything. It's there, but there's a lot.
Are you the two that have secured advanced viewings? It sounds like
I've not.
who would do that?
I've not seen. Yeah, I've not seen an advanced viewing.
Piracy.
So I don't know what you're
Piracy.
I can't reveal my sources.
legally,
talking
we
about.
can't
Were I
continue
to
this
have
conversation.
pirated it, I certainly wouldn't admit it. On the record.
Ron Johnson joins soon. We're also going to get into the worst Vikings QB experiments in team history on the Minnesota Football Party. Today's episode presented by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Ron Johnson coming up. As we await Ron, we will begin nominating for the worst Vikings QB experiments in team history after we play this epic open.
This is Minnesota Sports Rankum, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
This is where we need help from the chat. Please nominate, because I think the criteria is very broad. We're about to have that debate right now. What is a failed QB experiment? Is it any QB that was drafted? Is it a 1-year engagement, a 1-game thing? We certainly have a couple of those in the holster. What is a failed QB experiment? I don't think we need to establish a criteria necessarily that we all use, but you can talk about what you want to use as you give your rankings. So let's have it out. Nominees for the worst QB experiment.
Joe Webb.
Joe Webb
like
playoff
is-
game.
Yeah,
The-
no, just
Back
Joe
of-
Webb.
Oh,
in
just Joe
general.
Webb.
Did you
Oh,
mean the
Packer game
best, the
specifically.
best QB experiments? Because
Yeah,
that's
Joe Webb
definitely
was
on
great.
both
Joe
lists.
Webb was
What?
fun.
Yeah, no, he's definitely on both lists. I love Joe Webb. Didn't work
Certainly
out.
an experiment, but is he?
Yeah.
Does he make the worst?
I think the Joe Webb playoff game specifically, I would put maybe honorable mention or on this list, maybe. Okay,
Yeah, it
but
feels like an honorable
in
mention.
general, Joe Webb, I wouldn't put him on the worst experiment.
Philly game, the Detroit near comeback where he got
the
face
Philly
masked,
game
it didn't
was
count.
outstanding. Yeah, he should have gotten the Detroit comeback. If you go through like Getty images for that game, you can actually see one of the photos that they've captured is the face mask penalty. Yep. It's incredible.
Yep. And remember, Christian Ponder put them in a hole, a 21-0 hole, and he ran his way back to tie that game up. Just ran everywhere.
But would Christian Ponder count as an experiment, or is he just a draft bust?
Experiment doesn't seem to like fit here. Like, so I would say it doesn't have to be somebody who doesn't play quarterback playing quarterback. I don't think that has to be the only criteria for experiment. But I think it has to be a pick that, or not a pick. It has to be a situation that's a little bit out of the norm. So, for example, Warren Moon is a successful quarterback experiment. They grabbed a quarterback that had functionally retired, if I remember correctly, and who's originally was like playing this gimmick offense in Houston, the run and shoot, who himself was a quarterback experiment for Houston, grabbing him from like the CFL, right? Like that's a double quarterback experiment. Or I'd say Donovan McNabb was kind of a small scale sort of experiment, grabbing a guy that, again, it's like kind of a non-traditional. Brett Favre, kind of an experiment that was very successful. So it doesn't have to be, position switch or anything like that for it to be an experiment. But like I think Ponder was too standard a situation to qualify as a quarterback experiment.
It didn't fit the vibe of let's try this and see what happens. It was more like this is the process. Yeah.
Then I think we have to say it was the first one that came up in the chat, which is Josh Freeman.
That's number one on my list.
Absolutely. It's got to be number one, right? Like that's the quintessential. We tried this, and oh boy, did that not work.
Let's read the stat line.
It's iconic.
20 of
iconic,
53.
Yes. The gravity gif. Oh my god.
Gravity gif.
It's so.
The
it's
only
so
points
good.
generated in that game for the Vikings were on a punt return.
By who? Sherrills?
Marcus Sherrills.
Who
It
else?
is the 5th worst yards per attempt of all time with over 50 pass attempts.
Over 50.
Wow.
20 of
That's
50.
right.
Do it again.
Leslie Frazier was mad, so he just threw every play because he was like, "How dare you make me do this and not put my guy Ponder back in?"
Do it again.
Yeah, it would, clearly like Frazier hadn't. Yeah. Oh god, that game is just an exercise in quarterback depression. Because I mean, Eli Manning was playing one of the worst Eli Manning games we've ever seen. Too.
Well, Jared Allen
at
was
the same
his
time.
life a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jared
Mike
Allen-
Tirico just saying, "Man, these teams are bad."
Jared Allen.
Yeah, Jared Allen sacked Eli Manning through a guy.
Through a guy.
Right? Like he didn't have to go around the tackle to grab the sack. He was just like, "Oh, I could just whoop," and then just grabbed him. And Manning was like, "I can't."
True
I'm in the
Eli
grass.
fashion, he just just goes limp like a deer in the wood. Like, okay, I'm done.
It was perfect. It was an ideal awful game. Like there's awful games that are impossible, and then but that
the platonic ideal of bad football.
Exactly. It was and
which for some reason has to happen on Monday Night Football. It doesn't hit the same if it's on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, or
so
certainly
Sean
not
Mannion
like
at Lambeau would not hit the same way as a Monday.
Right,
exactly.
I think Sean Mannion
also because that wasn't on purpose. Like nobody in the Vikings building wanted Sean Mannion in that game. People in the Vikings building wanted Josh Freeman in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That goes to the experiment thing. Yeah.
Forced the issue after he had spent like a week and a half in the building.
Yeah.
They're like, you gotta play this guy. We paid, I don't know, $3 million whole for him. Like, what? Okay.
I have two off the beaten path here that I need to put on the list. One, QB punter hybrid Bob Lee. Catastrophic tenure in between Joe Cap and Fran Tarkenton's return, and lost them a playoff game in 1971. Bud Grant insisted on starting him. He was benched by halftime in that game after 2 interceptions for Gary Kawaza, who then threw also 2 interceptions, and they lost.
Also rules.
Kawaza was on Arif's short list for the best out of nowhere QB seasons.
What?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other guy, though. Bob Lee. Kawaza,
When you paused at the word best, I was like, Sam, no, you got to finish that sentence.
And then here's the thing. In 1987, the strike, they had the scabs. They struggled really hard to find a quarterback because essentially Mike Lynch just thought that they wouldn't have to. He was just like, this won't last. We won't have to get any strike players. And then there was like a game tomorrow and they still didn't have a roster. And in that scramble, they considered a number of hilarious things, including putting DB's coach Pete Carroll in at quarterback. But ultimately, they settled on a guy named Tony Adams, who was dreadfully bad and also a year older than Pete Carroll was at the time. Like a retired quarterback that hadn't played since like high school or something like that. Wow. Catastrophic, lost all 3 games, and probably was the reason that 1987 team had to be Road Warriors. Like, he was, of all the people responsible for the Vikings doing poorly during the strike games, he probably was the most. And, like, certainly it's not an experiment you wanted to do, but certainly off the beaten path.
So those are 2 really good name drops there. Where would you have them ranked with the Josh Freeman, Donovan McNabb, Kellen Mond, Joe Webb playoff game? Like, where are they? Because I don't know as much about those seasons and those performances as you do.
You know, I'm throwing them out right now because I'm still trying to get a sense for how we're deciding to rank all these. Are we ranking them by the worst, by the most experimental?
Right. Yeah.
Vibe it out, I think. But I think the Tony Adams one, I don't want to ding him too bad because it sounds like a commitment to not get scabs. And that I always kind of want to respect a little bit, right? Like, I don't, like...
Well, he was happily a scab.
Right, Tony Adams, right? But, like, the reason that they hired him is because they weren't... They waited too long, right, to get a scab.
Yeah.
They were just like...
I don't think that had anything to do with, like, pro-union or anything. That they just...
I don't care why.
They just called the bluff.
Yeah.
They didn't think the strike was serious. Like, that's
then it's the opposite thing.
Like, he was like, they'll cave, and then they didn't.
Well,
and everybody else had already gotten snapped up all the good CFL players.
Power to them for accidentally enabling the strike. Then it's not too bad. Sure, it screwed up the whole season and put them on the road in the play. I don't care. Great. Yeah. So I'm not gonna ding that one too badly, but
you could argue too that the Vikings wouldn't have been that good were it not for those 3 weeks of what essentially turned into like a team building activity. They came back like super, super strong, and that was not true of a lot of teams that had like players crossing the picket lines and like drama within on all that stuff. Like, they came back from that super, super tight knit, and then they like went on a tear.
Yeah, that season's not as special either if they don't go on the road in the playoffs and win those 2 games. So it all kind of worked out.
It all kind of works out. But yeah,
who knows if Wade Wilson wins at home?
I think those 2 examples do represent kind of the vibe of a failed quarterback experiment. I think both of them kind of qualify as this, right?
Where does McNabb sit? Because it's obviously more than it's 6 games.
I got him at 2 on my list because of the expectations were so high, right? This is Donovan McNabb coming off the Philadelphia run, 4 straight NFC championships. Him and T.O. He's a little older. Yeah, okay, there might be a year or 2.
He's coming off of like throwing up on the field for Washington. Like, it's
the Washington.
The same.
Yeah, but that's where quarterbacks go to die. The Washington, forget about it. They never had a chance there in Washington.
Like, we watched Favre with the Jets, and then he was good with us. Maybe McNabb, it'll be the same thing. That was
there was hope. There was excitement. That's
what I'm saying is that, Luke, you are describing the copium version of the way people were approaching this offseason. I think that generally speaking, I think you have to convince yourself, right? I think generally speaking, spirits weren't
for sure
remarkably high. I will say that after their win against the Chargers, in which McNabb threw like 39 yards.
That was the Cardinals. You mean the home?
Adrian Peterson ran for like 4 touchdowns or something.
So wasn't the season opener against the Chargers? Percy Harvin starts off with a kickoff.
Yeah, but they lost the game. They blew it.
Oh, they lost the game. Okay,
they lost leads in the first 4 games, including some huge leads to start 0-4.
Yeah.
And then they had an ugly win against Arizona. And then on Sunday night at Chicago, McNabb gets benched in Game 6 for Ponder and probably talk about ruining players. Ponder being thrown in Game 6 obviously was a little too early.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know that there was ever a situation where Ponder would have succeeded. If I'm being 100% honest.
but it sure as heck wasn't that one.
That wasn't that.
Yeah,
bad.
certainly they were not maximizing his chances. I think, what was it? One of Ponder's first throws was the deep ball to was it Michael Jenkins?
Jarius Wright.
No.
Jarius Wright in the Packer game. Are you thinking of
I
the
don't
Bears
think that
game?
was Jarius Wright. I'm talking about
Jarius
Packer
Wright was
game.
a rookie in 2012. He wasn't there yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was to
Jenkins,
Michael Jenkins, where it was like a deep throw against the Packers. It was 67 yards to the end zone. Initially, we all thought it was a touchdown, but it turned out to be a 66-yard throw, which I believe was the longest catch Michael Jenkins had in a Vikings uniform. It was really perfect.
Wow.
Love that pull. Great pull. Great pull.
But yeah,
Ponder had a minute. Like, he beat the Panthers, and then he was good against the Packers, like, for a 2-game stretch right away.
Blair Walsh beat the Panthers. Let's.
Adrian Peterson helped.
Yeah, he had the Adrian Peterson stuff too. So
Yeah.
I think we have Josh Freeman number 1. I think we all agree on that.
Yes.
Yep.
I could put McNabb 2.
I got McNabb too.
I'm comfortable with that. I still want Joe Webb on the list, even though we loved it, because it ultimately did fail as an
I
experiment.
have the Webb playoff game on my list. If you want to talk me into the whole Webb,
Was there an
experiment,
alternative?
That's fine.
Was there any alternative though? That's the thing. That was really
Well, but that's why I want
Yeah.
to use Joe Webb in general. His presence on the roster, whether listed as a receiver or as a quarterback, impacted their quarterback decision making. Impacted, how they would approach the quarterback position kind of going forward, right? It's like, oh, well, this guy is definitely our quarterback 3 / we've got the Blazer package, which that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about him as a failed quarterback experiment.
Love
the
it.
Blazer package sucked. It was the worst.
It was not good. It was fun.
And part of that is because they would almost never throw out of it, but then you saw them throw out of it once, and you were like, okay, I see the vision now. I see why you didn't want to do that. But then if he's never throwing out of it, why are we doing this whole
There's
thing
no
anyway?
threat of a pass, so it doesn't work.
And why is he running up the middle? Why is it always running up the middle?
They tried this with Patterson too. That didn't work. They tried doing gimmicks with McKinnon. I don't know. The gimmick packages just in general had low returns on investment. We got Ron Johnson joining too. We'll see if he has any thoughts on this. Ron Johnson is at 3Ron Johnson on X. He hosts the Ron Johnson Show on Tuesdays. Ron, wearing the Vikings polo. Welcome in. I got a question for you. Going back to 2003. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we're talking a lot about quarterbacks. We're talking about, J.J. McCarthy and the quarterback hype going into his rookie year. If I'm not mistaken, 2003, you're with the Ravens. Kyle Bowler was a top 10, top 15 pick that year. I want you to take us back. What do you remember about the hype and about sort of what that first offseason with a first-round quarterback was like in Baltimore?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think we either drafted Suggs first and then Kyle, or Kyle first, then Suggs. But I know they both were first-rounders coming in, and they both were top picks, high picks. I know Suggs, and I can't remember which way they did it, but I know they had to trade to get one. The one thing I remember about Kyle, so if I was home, I had a plan, because I actually have, and I found this. I forgot all about this. Kyle Bowler and I did an appearance at a mall together. So there's this big poster board that's in my basement, and it's me and Kyle Bowler, and it's it was supposed to be our come to the mall and meet us, bring a gift, and then we give that to charity deal, and we'll sign something. It was I don't know how he and I got roped into it together, maybe young quarterback. But he came out of Cal. He wore number 8, and so you can understand where the hype was coming from, what they thought he was going to be. They thought he was the next up-and-coming Aaron Rodgers. The biggest problem, and I do believe this, if Kyle Bowler could have come in and sat behind a veteran, because they did bring in Jeff Blake, they were trying to figure out if Chris Redman was going to be healthy or not, which he ended up, his back was not good. Kyle needed to sit. And I think that was the biggest issue. Kyle getting thrown into the fire and not being able to sit behind a veteran for a year or two, like Aaron Rodgers did, I think would have made Kyle so much better. He had a really strong arm. He could, I think one of the things, he threw the ball 60 or 70 yards on his knees or something, at the pro day. So all that kind of stuff, like he did, but he just didn't have touch. Like he threw balls way too hard. But yeah, his hype coming in, they were like, this guy's gonna have a chance to be like, like a Aaron Rodgers type of guy. Like I think they were thinking in their minds, here's the next great Cal quarterback. But it just wasn't it.
You just scared me there because you said big arm strength without touch, and I think the detractors of McCarthy would say that's the issue: is that it's all arm strength, not enough.
But he
touch.
doesn't wear number 8 though. He wore 9, so it's different. It's
fine.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
different.
Way
Yep.
different. Way different. Yeah. Way different.
But,
By the way,
the Vikings did also trade up for a pass rusher.
just like Zug. There you go.
true.
Wow. So you're
True.
saying that Dallas Turner will be a Hall of Famer and
Hey.
2033 Super Bowl
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing.
And Sam Darnold
Yeah.
will lead us to the promised land. Yeah, Terrell
Right,
Suggs
yeah.
picks with the
But that's the
10th
difference.
overall
That's
pick,
the difference.
by the
JJ
way.
McCarthy has Sam Darnold.
Right.
Kyle
Yeah.
Bowler did not. That was
Right.
Brian Billick, former Vikings offensive coordinator. That was Brian Billick's one downfall. He bought in Jeff Blake, but Jeff Blake was just way too old and could not do it. Like he did come in at times and he would tell us old Pickens receiver stories, and Jeff Blake had one of the best deep balls I've ever seen. But I don't think he was fully ready. Anthony Wright actually ended up being the starter at one point for the Ravens as well in that span when Kyle Bowler was there, which I don't understand how that happened. But I think they were just looking for a veteran, and that's what they went with. But yeah, Kyle he needed a veteran, and they didn't really have a guy like Sam Darnold to be there for a little bit to help him out, or Brett Favre.
Yeah, Suggs with the 10th overall pick. Kevin
Minneapolis
Williams
native
drafted by
Suggs,
the
by the way.
Vikings. Yeah, right before. Yeah, that's right. And Bowler was drafted with the 19th pick, so 9 picks
Okay.
later. So you're right, they did have 2 picks. Now I'm just curious about this 2003 Ravens team that you got to play with. So many studs, man. Pro Bowlers: Jamal Lewis, Jonathan Ogden, Orlando Brown, obviously Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Chris McAllister, Peter Boulware, plus the coach Billick you mentioned as well. Was there one guy you showed up to camp, or you're a couple months in now and you weren't starstruck, but you're like, dude, I get it, this guy is just on another level compared to everybody else?
So 2002 was my rookie year. So that year, it was more of Pete Boulware, Ray Lewis, Mike McCrary was still there at the time. They had just won. Saragusa was around.
The Goose.
The Goose.
So seeing those guys, because they had just won the Super Bowl in 2000. So
Right.
that was kind of the cool thing. Was I remember watching Ray Lewis in the Super Bowl doing all the stuff, blah blah. And then I lucked up in my locker because me and Ed Reed were locker mates. Ed Reed wanted to be next to Ray Lewis. So it was me, Ed, Ray. And so I was, and then, Corey Fuller was in that corner. Pete Boulware was over there. So I got lucky enough to kind of be in the corner where it was Todd Heap, me, myself, I forgot the other receiver.
Travis Taylor.
Stokely. So Todd Heap, Stokely, Todd Heap, and Chris Redmond. We used to, I forgot the nickname we called them, but they were weird. So they were like a little triangle of friends. And they always,
Weird.
they were weird. They would always be together. And it's so funny because Todd was a Mormon, but they always got him to do un-Mormon-like stuff. They would get him to gamble.
Get him to drink coffee, just awful.
Tight end documentary coming out on Netflix next year.
They would always try to get him to do stuff that was un-Mormon-like, not on purpose, but just hey man, we're back here playing Pass the Trash, man. It's only $20. So Todd would be all right, man, let's do it. And he would come back there and play Pass the Trash for $20, and it always turned in 20 turned into 60, and the next thing you know, Todd's back there full on gambling. But I'd say that group, Ray Lewis, watching him and Pete Boulware, how they operated on defense. And then our little group, though, even if you look at Bart Scott, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs the next year, Chester Taylor, that 2003 year we came in, as veterans. I mean, we were second year guys. It was kind of fun to just see now what this defense could be, because that was the year we ended up winning the AFC North or whatever. We went to the playoffs and lost to Tennessee, but that's what I remember is coming into camp that 2003 year. It was more about the defense because we were drafting a rookie quarterback. And so we knew this defense is going to take us as far as we're going to go.
Right. No, that makes sense. Had to be a lot of fun. Those names are crazy.
That sounds like a ton of fun.
Turning back to present day, Ron, give me a surprise roster make. Somebody nobody's talking about that you think is going to sneak onto the 53.
Oh, man. I think Najee Thompson is going to make it again. I think people think he's a lock because of special teams, but I mean, you look at all the guys they drafted, Kyrie Jackson, some of these other guys. I don't know if Najee Thompson's a lock, but I think he's going to make it. Like, I think he's going to find a way on the roster. I think he's a fan favorite as well. And, you know, because he's not going to get a lot of play at corner. So how much can Flores use him when he has all these other guys? But I'd say, you know, right now I'm thinking, you know, one of the guys is Najee Thompson. I don't know if that's a surprise. Maybe that's one that you guys had locked in, but I don't know. I didn't.
Braun is the president of the Najee Thompson fan club. I think most others that would be.
It's been a lock. It's okay.
Anybody else? Yeah. Arif, what do you got? 4 minutes left, by the way.
Right. I'm so interested in kind of how the depth at edge rusher will play out. Right. So we know who the top 3 guys are, but after that, like, I just have no clue how to sort out like the Andre Carters and the Gabriel Murphys and the Patrick Jones. How do you see that kind of playing out? Because they do need to get that 4th guy secured.
I think Patrick Jones moves up. And again, maybe because I spent some time with him at the softball game, and I'm a little biased now. But watching his movement, and then I went out to practice and watched again and how they're utilizing some guys. I think Patrick Jones is a guy that can get a bigger role in this defense. So from a depth perspective, I would say like Andre Carter and Patrick Jones are up there. I think some of these younger guys are going to start. Like Dallas Turner is going to be up there regardless. But I think some of these other names are just going to get pushed back. And I think Flores, again, I think he's going to go like deep with safety corner. Like we were surprised last year. I don't think we're going to be surprised this year. Like I'm not going to be surprised when I see 10 safeties and cornerbacks on this defensive roster.
Good stuff, Ron. We're a little up against the clock today, but people can tune in tomorrow on the roundtable. We're talking Wolves, man. We're talking Rob Dillingham. We're talking Terrence Shannon Jr. tomorrow on the roundtable.
We're talking Bronny tonight, 30 soon.
In 4 hours, Bronny could be a Timberwolf. You're right.
Kyle
You're not wrong.
Filipowski. Nobody drafted Filipowski either.
Still
he
on
could
the
be
board.
there.
Wow.
He could be there.
Still on
They
the
haven't
board.
drafted any size yet, really.
Get a Kentucky and a Dookie. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Come on now.
I'm excited. He hosts the Ron Johnson Show as well and the Roundtable on Fridays. Ron Johnson, everybody, joins us every Thursday. Thanks a lot, Ron.
Appreciate it.
All right, we got 2 minutes. Just put a bow on our ranking. We got Freeman 1. These are the worst QB experiments in team history. Freeman 1. We're comfortable with McNabb 2. Who fills out the Mount Rushmore?
Kellen Mond?
Nah.
Or is that too recent? Is that too fresh?
I don't know if it's experimental enough. That's just a draft.
Yeah.
Like if we're not putting Ponder on, I don't think we're putting Mond on.
Yeah, I think.
I want to put Bob Lee third.
Yeah, I was going to suggest Bob Lee.
He was a QB punter hybrid. It was a disaster. He was QB3 for a while until Bud Grant just kind of started benching people. Like in a playoff run, had a 2013 style. None of these guys are good moment, and putting in the punter was like his idea come playoff time.
How bad was Sean Salisbury? I'm just ripping out names.
He was not great. He was not great.
He was a backup.
Jim McMahon.
But also for the era, he was probably more acceptable. Like looking at some
Jim
of the
McMahon
stats,
got hurt for half that season.
Okay.
Yeah.
This list
I
is
think
so much longer. Is Spurgeon Wynn definitely a nominee?
Spurgeon Wynn, I thought
Actually, yes.
too, but yeah.
Yeah,
Todd
I think Spurgeon Wynn qualifies as an experiment. I think the fact that we're running low in experiments means we might have to put Joe Webb on this list. I love it.
That would be
but
Arif's thrill.
I'm going Tony Adams 4th, Joe Webb 5th. How about that?
perfect.
I respect it. We got a roll. And this list could have been so much longer, but a lot of their experiments kind of worked out, which is kind of shocking. Minnesota Football Party Mondays and Thursdays, live or on demand or on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. Luke Inman, Luke Braun, Arif Hassan. I'm Sam Ekstrom. You also met Ron Johnson. And we'll talk to you Monday on the Minnesota Football Party. See ya.